Here to discuss the animation editing experience, please welcome panelists Susan Fitzer and Lynn Hobson, moderated by Variety's own Carolyn Giardina.
Well, we have got a great animation panel for you. I'd like to introduce, seated at the end is Susan Fitzer. Susan most recently You can read longer bios on everybody in the program, but I'm going to give some brief introductions. She recently edited the musical fantasy Spellbound, which was directed by Vicki Jensen. It was created at Skydance Animation and will be coming out through Netflix later this year. Don't miss it. And her previous credits and involvement in animation include Abominable, Turbo, Over the Hedge, and one of my personal favorites, How to Train Your Dragon. And also joining us is Lynn Hobson, who cut the Josh Cooley-directed Transformers 1, which is coming out on September 20th. Don't miss it. This is an origin story, and it's coming out from Paramount Animation and Hasbro. And her previous credits also include the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Dragons, Riders of Berk, Monsters vs. Aliens, and Shrek Forever After. So while editing is obviously still editing and storytelling, as you saw from that animatics clip, the process is a little bit different. So why don't we add to that clip and start just by talking about, how is your creative process different in animation? Lynn, do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, animation, you compared to editing, say, a live action movie, we do start with essentially nothing but a script. And you kind of work backwards like a film. They script, they shoot, and then you have all this footage and you cut that. We're kind of backwards. The lighting and the cinematography is the last thing added to animated storytelling. So you start with the script and you're given boards and you're building that to best represent the script and the story. It's different in every aspect of animation too, whether you're doing features or like a television show. It's kind of a different process, a different notes process back and forth with executives and how much they might really analyze the story versus, like I also did the SpongeBob television show, and that there are two 11-minute segments back to back. So it makes a huge difference in the amount of time spent storytelling and the back and forth and the type of changes that might occur when you're building a script into an animatic to represent the movie as best you can.
Yeah, well said. I would say there's so much creativity that you don't realize takes place in editorial and animation that I certainly didn't when I switched from live action to animation. You can actually, shop takes with your director and say, this line isn't working. Let's rewrite that line. Mm-hmm. Let's re-record. It's you can do that. You said this animation isn't working. We're not getting the acting we need out of the character. So let's send it back to animation. Or this camera shot. I think if we pulled in tighter and did a slow push in, you can affect every level. And every department from editorial instead of, in live action where you're like, okay, these are the parts that I have, so I have to work within these parts.
Of it.
We can actually make new parts, which was something I had never even known before joining an animation community.
And that's part of the creative process, is evolving what you have to work with and making it work best for your storytelling. Yeah. Through the picture, through the image, through the cinematography, through everything, and you create those shots you need. And like you said, you're working with the dialogue to, is this working?
Yeah.
It can be rewritten. Sometimes that's a blessing and a curse, though, that it can be rewritten.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, stop touching it, it's working.
Yeah,
it's good.
and
Remember, we liked it 6 months ago, it's good, keep it that way.
Yeah, that's something.
It was funny then, do it.
That's something that goes across both animation and live action. It's like, yes, you're not laughing as much because you've seen it 28 times, but
Yeah.
trust me, you laugh through, through time
But
23.
it's harder than a live action movie though, because sometimes features in our animated world can last 2 to 3 years or longer. So
to give you an example, so when I started Spellbound, I have twins. I started Spellbound, they were in middle school. Finished a few months ago. They're now starting their sophomore year of college. But career longevity. Mama was employed that whole time. So.
Oh, man.
That's great. Well, we talk about the collaborative process, but certainly that relationship with the director is so important. Last spring, I moderated our variety animation panel at Annecy, and Vicki Jensen, director of Spellbound, was on the panel. And I want to say that she actually talked about you on the panel and talked about how vital you were to her process and the filmmaking. So would you just maybe elaborate a little bit about how you worked with Vicki on this film?
Yeah, I would say, I will work with Vicki again anywhere, anyhow, any time that I can. Building that relationship with a director, and I'm sure Dean and Shane said before us, that trust that you build with that director. Vicki and I had known each other for years at DreamWorks, but had never actually worked with each other. So there was a little bit of the growing pains, getting to know each other, getting to know, her work style and what she responded to, cut-wise, musically, and then getting her, trust, earning her trust and knowing that she had, just full belief that I was there to help build and guide and make sure she got the best version of that film that would just sing, sing. And we, we're together over 5 years now, and we have a shorthand. We just know we go into a record session with, one of our fantastic actors, Rachel Zegler, Javier, Nicole, and we'd sit there and we'd look at each other and we just knew that was the take. Mm-hmm. I knew, that shorthand, or she'd give me that little wink and, and I'd go, yes. But then other times, she would ask me, do you think we have it? And I'd give her my notes and she's always very respectful and very, very nurturing of not just my contribution through editorial, but every single department. She just wanted them to shine and feel like they were, delivering their creative best, and that's all about trust and trusting and having patience with your artists.
And Lynn, this was on Transformers 1. This was your first time working with writer-director Josh Cooley.
Yes. He's from Pixar, Toy Story 4, and most of his career was at Pixar. And we hit it off right when we first met, so I felt very, very blessed that he trusted me to help with his movie and put his vision up. He, like you were just saying, like it's all the team that Vicki was trusting. Josh is like that too, and animation is definitely a collaborative effort. Like it's not just one department, it's not just one director, it's not just one producer. It's a team, and it goes all the way through. Like every shot gets examined and touched by the animation team, the lighting, the background, and everything. But he, being as talented as he is, he's not only like a director who has a very, very strong vision, but also works very collaboratively with everybody involved, especially edit, because we're kind of the keepers of the whole movie, for like following it through a stage and kind of keeping the essence of it. And you don't want things to like disappear like a joke or something that's really working. So we're like, no, keep it. But he not only has a strong vision as a director and the very strong talent of listening to people he works with and taking the feedback that really works for him, is he can also write, which is lovely, especially because, like she said, writing does happen along the way. It's, you get notes from execs and you have to like, okay, how do we address that? Even if you might have a plan of like, okay, we got to send that back to a writing team to punch up the dialogue or X, Y, and Z. Basically, it's in the cutting room that it really, you're tightening and you're pointing out the errors where you might need a new line or something, or a line isn't working, and then you get improv from your actors, etc. But so Josh is a good writer, and he can draw storyboards. And for us, that's like amazing. So he's like the triple threat of like a director, and not all directors.
And that
can do all
helped
that.
you in turn be able to make decisions together.
Yeah,
faster.
yeah, and like it was great. So we had a really good, I mean, of course, directors spent a lot of time in the edit bay, but then those times where you're like, I just need to work on these new boards and cut in all the new dialogue we just got and then do some sound effects and music, and then I'll show it to you again. He's like, okay, I'll leave. You tell me when you want me back, which is great because he is also a director that's willing to like let you just work because, you know, you don't have to watch me cut boards together all day or whatever, cut in the new anim shots and stuff like that. So we had a great relationship, and he's, you know, I'd work with him in, again, a heartbeat as well, so.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to look at some clips from these movies, and before we start, just we're grateful that the studios have given Ace permission to show these clips because both movies are not out yet. So I do have to emphasize no recording at all, please. And we are going to start with Transformers 1. Would you like to introduce the clip?
Yeah, I mean, this clip is actually, I didn't know they were going to show you all the steps of animation in the process to get to the final movie. We didn't know that, so hopefully it was good. But it's starting with an animatic, so it's a clip that's basically the very first pass of what we do in animation, from the boards, temporary dialogue, into temporary music, which is sort of your template for what you might give the composer, whether it's comedy, action, drama, whatever you want to have in there, and then sound effects. So that's what we're going to watch first, and then it's the exact same sequence in the final version, lit with all the real sound and the composer's score and everything. And it is an action sequence where it has some comedy too, so that's kind of why I picked this clip. And it shows all of our characters, but it's where Optimus Prime has to rescue D16 and B, so he brings Alita and a team of the, before they're Decepticons, a team of helpers to come rescue them from the villain who, I don't know if I should tell you who the villain is, but you've seen it. Anyways, you're going to see the clip, so anyways.
Let's watch.
Whoa! I got a battle mask! Alita! Battle mask! It appeared when this guy tried to... Knife hands? I have knife hands! Ah! What the... Oh! Ha ha ha! Badassatron.
We're Sentinel.
You pathetic little twits. Did you really think that you could knock down everything I've built?
It's over, Sentinel. You can't escape the truth.
What truth? That I plucked the cogs from your newborn chests? Forced you to mine so that I could live comfortably? None of that matters, because the truth is what I make it!
Incoming!
He's too strong.
I have a plan. We need Arachnid.
Arachnid?
We need her memory. Where is she?
Down her!
Alita.
Do not break her. Bring her to the broadcast station. We'll meet you there.
Easier said than done.
I said don't break her.
Relax. Being very gentle.
Orion! Orion, look! I have knife hands!
I can see that.
I'm gonna cut these guys, watch! Come here!
You can stab them later. We gotta go.
Excuse me, you can't be in here. B. These are not the bad guys.
Why did you cut the door?
Oh no, it was already like that, right? Right?
Yes, that's right. It was. Yeah, it was already like. Yeah, it was already like.
Whoa! I got a battle mask! Alita! Battle mask! It appeared with this guy tried to... Knife hands?
Would you elaborate a little on just your creative process in putting that scene together? I mean, you've got action, you've got drama, you've got comedy, and you've got a lot of characters that you need to keep active.
Yeah. And actually, I forgot, we did have some production dialogue, which is our actual cast in the animatic in this building, this version. And then there were other scratch lines that were still in there in the animatic, but they got replaced. Yeah, I mean, it was a big sequence because there's a room that we're trying to use in a 360 sort of environment, and when you're in storyboards, it's a lot harder to represent that. So you're trying to, you need the right boards, you need, once it goes beyond an animatic and into your camera, which is called previs or layout, that helps put things in the environment they need to be, and you will get new cameras or new shots to help it play correctly to get you as far as to going into animation. But that one, we did wrestle a little bit with the whole getting into the building, and so we knew where the space was, and then where all the characters were, because there's a lot of characters to track. And early on when you're in boards, you really have to use dialogues or sound effects so people get who you're looking at, because they're two black and white characters drawn in a board form, or sometimes you have to say, look, you have to color Optimus Prime his color and color D16 his color so we can tell who's who as well. But yeah, it was a lot to squeeze in there because there's so many characters, and then some characters go one direction, like Alita's out the window fighting Arachnid, who's one of the villains, and then the other characters have a plan to go a different direction. So, I mean, I think it became clear once we got there, but it was confusing tracking all that to know what's happening in the storyboard phase. There's a lot to track even when it gets into animation. And then some of our actors bring so much new things to the sequence too. Like Keegan-Michael Key is hilarious, and he's one of the actors that does a lot of improv.
Bumblebee.
Huh?
Bumblebee.
Bumblebee, yeah. He improvises a lot when he records, and so that it becomes pure gold, and you're and there's so many things I wish we were able to leave in the final movie that we had to cut out, because either they're just we're going off target here, we can't go down that rabbit hole, or they just were inappropriate. So you have to pick and choose. But oh my God, he's hilarious. But he'd add a lot of stuff, and then you're oh, the scene now is evolving because we want to use what he was able to add, or what our other actors too are fantastic. So it changes things, and you have to be open to that and then make it work, especially if it's enhancing what's happening. And this sequence, making a Transformers movie too, we wanted it to be a people story. It's two friends and what happens to them that makes them split. So we didn't want the entire movie to be a giant battle or a giant action scene. But when we did have those scenes, we wanted them to be fun and worthy of needing to be in the story and watching what's happening, what's evolving. And so all the characters are figuring out how to work together too. They're discovering new powers they didn't have, like Bumblebee with the knife hands. And it's nice to have those sort of comical breaks in something that might be very dramatic too, with what's happening. So, and then I'll tell you a little secret too, which I don't know if I'm supposed to tell, but I will. In that scene, and I always forget about it, but the scene at the end where the two guards are going, yeah, it's okay, yeah, whatever you say, when he goes, right, that's our director. And he's SAG, so it's fine, he can do a voice in the movie. But those two lines, when we would work together and I'd get new script pages and then I'm getting boards, and then we kind of would record professional scratch, or just find the people within the studio that could do lines that were really great. And we did this at DreamWorks and every place we worked together. And then that's what you're building, just to be like, we got to watch this sequence and how's it working? And it's the first pass. Sometimes I couldn't wait that long. I'm like, I got bored yesterday. It's hard to cut until I have the dialogue. So Josh would go ahead, and I'd be like, I don't care if it's Alita, Bumblebee, the background characters. You need to record every single line in this sequence and send it to me. And of course, we're all used to that from like working during lockdown. Everybody's recording on their phones, and it's like crazy. So we'd do that. And he'd give me the whole sequence, and I was like, great, this is a starting point. I can start building the sequence. And then we'd replace the lines with the female cast member that we cast and all that before we record Scarlett Johansson or anybody. But he did those guard voices in there, and they were so funny, and they're so good. And then later when we actually... And that's him playing off himself as each guard. Like, he didn't even try to make the voice different. And then basically when we recorded, and we're like, okay, we got to cast those characters, I was like, okay, Josh should just be at least one of those guards. And they tried to record the other guard like professional. I tried to cut it in, and it just wasn't working as well. Like the comedy, the timing, the rhythm of just them going, yeah, it's okay, like talking of each other wasn't working, and everybody here like laughed. So it's like, I'm glad that we kept it, because trying to force in a different professional voice is like, no. And everybody's like, but it's Josh playing off of Josh. I'm like, it's been in the trailer. Nobody cares. Nobody's noticed. It's like, it's already out there. And that's it. This is even like the trailer's released early before we're even done recording all the casting, right? And all animating. So yeah, so Josh stayed in that sequence as Josh playing off of Josh in that little moment with like, right, Bumblebee. So, and these are the things we hang on to when they're working, and you don't want to, you don't want to dilute it if it's already working, and it works so perfectly, so yeah.
Well, you were also working with a large and high-profile cast. Chris Hemsworth plays Optimus Prime, and you've mentioned some of the other cast members. How did you navigate all of that?
Well, Chris Hemsworth, he's super talented, and he's really great for the role of Optimus Prime. And I know early on it was sort of like, who's going to play these characters? Who's worthy? Because, we're trying to stay true to, we work closely with the live-action producer, Lorenzo de Bonaventura. I'm stumbling my words, sorry. But he, he's the keeper of all the live-action franchise, right? And he worked great with us and great with Josh, because he was very supportive, especially when you're dealing with studios like Hasbro and things like that, and what their notes are and the things they would like to do. But then you're also wanting to stay true to fans from 30 years ago who might have grown up with it as children. So Chris was great, and I'm glad, we were able to cast him, and he was willing to do it. Except he didn't want to record in Australia, so because that's where he lives. So it's like, that's convenient. But basically, our producer and our director had to fly down to record him. But I think they enjoyed that trip. And our ILM animation studios was also in Sydney. So we did that, people are all over the place, and we can do that now in this world. So they'd record him. We'd all join in on like a Zoom to, give our notes and everything. And Josh would just like turn off and he'd be like, let me go talk to the editor and just make sure, we've gotten what we need and stuff like that. But yeah, that made it different for sure when you're recording, because there is something dynamic about being able to be in person with the room and really hear what they're doing. And especially when, like I said, those two little lines, when you've been living with something in the temp or the scratch for a while and you really want to capture that, more will be brought to the table when you record your real production cast, but you're still trying to hang on to what was really working originally. And sometimes things weren't working as well, and they can only get better when you get your real talent in there. So, but yeah, that was great. And then, Scarlett Johansson.
And, in the interest of time, we're going to get to
too.
Yeah,
so, I get it, but yeah.
I'd love to talk about all of them, but unfortunately we don't have enough time. But for Spellbound, Rachel Zegler was our young protagonist, and you also had a very talented cast. Would you talk a little bit about working with them?
Yeah, we have the most amazing cast. I can't believe how lucky we are. We have Rachel Zegler as our Princess Elian, and she's just a delight and such a talent. We have Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman playing her parents. We have Nathan Lane and Titus Burgess. We have Jennifer Lewis and John Lithgow. And the best cast you will ever want. They were all so invested in this film and just wanted to deliver the emotion and the comedy and everything that Vicki wanted out of this film. For basically, when it boils down to it, this is a 15-year-old girl dealing with 15-year-old problems. I mean, this may take place in a fairy tale type of fantasy land, but it's really a modern story that we're telling. And I just think they were so adept at bringing everything to the table. And you talk about improvs. Oh, really quick. Nathan Lane and his improvs were fantastic. There's so many made it in, so many are left on the floor. But you know, the one thing we love as editors are actors that do their homework, that really come in prepared, and they know what their character is, or they know what they want to explore with their character. And Vicki was so great opening up those characters to exploration and working with them, trying to find their characters. And you know, I feel like we've really found gold.
How did that process impact you as the editor and your process?
It was wonderful to find those characters with them. Early on, like Lynn said, you know, it's a lot of temp, it's a lot of scratch, and it's helpful as editors and as your staff if everybody can jump in and see if it's working. And we're going to show a clip later that, you know, features Elian and Rachel Zegler, but every one of those lines was done by me first to see if it works. And you know, later when you see the full film, every one of those Nicole Kidman lines was delivered by Vicki first. And
awesome.
All of the Nathan Lane and Titus Burgess play off of each other. That's our brilliant head of story, Brian, who is playing off himself, you know. So it's really, you know, there's so much creative input that you have and potential you have as an editor that it's so fun to find. But then, like Lynn said, when you finally start recording them, they take it to the next level that you didn't even imagine, and your heart is breaking sometimes for these characters, or you're laughing so much. And then when the animators get in, and then each level, and they put in maybe a little face scratch or a little arm rub, and the subtleties, or a little look you know, Nathan Lane's character, you know, is doing.
And those things are hard to get in boards, so it's great when that gets added with the animators.
And, you know, it's so many times I call Vicki and I'm like, oh, did you see the new animation? And oh my God, it's fantastic. And it's
so good.
Well, we have the clip, so why don't we show that now? And again, just a reminder, no recording, please.
Yeah, let's set it up real quick so you know where it's coming from. So hopefully you've seen trailers. If not, you're going to see them very soon. So again, this is Rachel Zegler plays Elian, a 15-year-old princess whose parents have been turned into monsters. She didn't have enough to deal with. 15 and everything a 15-year-old goes through, and now her parents have turned into monsters, and they've just recently wreaked havoc. They've wreaked havoc, and she finds out that they're going to be sent away. And I mean, these are her parents, this is her family, even though they're totally annoying and now they're monsters, she still loves them. And so this is her escape from the castle with her parents, going to try to find a way to break the spell that they're under. So anyway, I chose this clip because it's got a little bit of humor, it's got great action, and Alan Menken does, this is a musical, so Alan Menken and Glenn Slater do these incredible songs in our movie, but also Alan does this beautiful score, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So you're going to hear a little bit of that score in this clip.
Soldiers, put down your weapons. I said drop them. Guess we gotta be a bit more specific.
So we often describe editing as the final rewrite, but in the case of animation, I think we can agree that you're rewriting and rewriting and rewriting throughout the whole process. Looking at that scene, would you pick one specific example and tell us a little bit about how it evolved during the editing process?
Yes, so we always knew that Elian had to escape on the castle, and this is kind of our launch into Act Two. As you know, editors, aspiring editors, are like, what's that launch into Act Two that takes you on the way and on that journey? And so this was in the film for quite some time, but it was very much like, you know, we had those debates on we need to just get to Act Two. We just need to cut and get out of there. But then it's like, well, then it's like too easy. She got out of the, you know, she got out away too easy, and got out of the castle too easy, and it didn't seem like a feat like what was so hard. And then we started opening it up, you know, fun, and we would have all of these fun jokes coming in, and there was one joke where, you know, they're speeding away and she gets past, and then this little old lady comes out, right, and like is walking across the road, and then like all the you know, we call them zealots, all the gazellas and their soldiers, they come to a stop, and they're like, she's like, oh, and then she drops her change purse, and she's like, whoopsie, you know, and she bends down, and she picks up that change purse, and she's like, oh,
she does voices
dear.
too.
Oh dear,
She's SAG.
dear, oh dear, and then she puts, oh, that one's a button, oh goodness, you know, and the soldiers are like, oh, you know, and it was hysterical. It was hysterical, but it's on the cutting room floor because it kind of stopped that momentum, and we really wanted to get going, and we wanted to be with Elian on her journey, and as fun as that little old lady was, she's on the cutting room floor, but fear not. She is an old maid, and when you see the film on November 22nd on Netflix and in hopefully select theaters, be sure to listen for Presenting the Royal Postmaster.
I never had this kind of talent, but I've seen Susan do these voices for many, many years, and she's amazing.
Speaking of that,
my scratch is not as good.
No, but you have so many other talents. Speaking of that, she says many, many years. She's not kidding. So Lynn and I have known each other 30 years. 30 years.
Beginnings of our career, more or less,
Very beginnings of our careers, and that's what kind of, you know, it was before animation, but know that animation is a family. You know, we are families out there, and we you know, we support each other. I'm so excited for Transformers 1. Intern I used to have, she wasn't even graduated, she hadn't even graduated from Dartmouth yet, has now cut the #1 animated film of all time. Our friend Marissa Horowitz cut Inside Out too. And so
it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And then another close friend has Wild Robot coming out, and another friend had Ultraman. All these great films, and these are all such close friends of ours.
Yeah. And we've watched everybody grow in the community
we're
too.
So supportive, and the best thing you can do is keep these friends, keep these contacts, support each other. Because animation is just, it's such a wonderful art form, and we are an art form. We're not just cartoons for kids. We're an
storytelling.
Art form, and some of the best films that have ever been made are animated films.
And this is a great year for animation too. There's a lot of, as you mentioned some of the titles, there's really wonderful work this year. A couple of other topics I'd like to touch on before we finish the panel. One of them is test screenings. When we were prepping, Lynn, you were saying that with Transformers, the idea was not to show pieces of the movie to the studios. They wanted to show it in its entirety. Would you talk about how you did that, and more importantly, why you did that?
in a live action movie, you know, they shoot the whole movie, and editors are working while they're filming, of course, but you work, once you have all the footage, you're building the movie from beginning to end with the director for a pass. It might be too long, it may, you know, it has more things than, you know, they want to let go of at that time. But the goal is show the movie in its entirety form, beginning to end, so that the studio or whoever needs to review it with them can get a sense of the whole story before you start like snipping too much. And in animation, everybody's always very excited to see stuff pretty quickly. And like, wait, you had 5 sequences, let's see them. And we're like, well, there are 5 sequences scattered between maybe Act 1, a couple in Act 2, and maybe 1 in Act 3. You know, it's just kind of like that. And then it's like, well, we can show you sequence by sequence, and we could show you maybe a chunk, but we never wanted to put up, because this can happen a lot, is if you show an Act 1 or you show an Act 1 and 2 and you don't get all the way to an Act 3, when the studio's like, it's time to show us what you guys have been doing, of course you're looking at chunks internally with your director and your immediate producing team and whoever. But it happens sometimes where the studio's like, show us what you got. We know it's in Act 3. We read the script. And you're like, oh, okay. So if you show in a small amount, sometimes you get trapped there because the studio will focus notes, or notes will come back just in those areas, and then you kind of can go down this little bit of a rabbit hole, like trying to address those notes, and it's like, oh my gosh, can we get to the end of the movie before we spiral somewhere, trying to fix that. And so we always thought out the gate, like, we do not want to show this movie in pieces to like screenings in a theater, to the head of the studio or whoever. We want them to see what we have based on the first script that we tried to put up as best we could. Even if it might be running a little long, we knew it might be playing young or might be playing old, or it's dark, or it's too comedy. You know, whatever our own internal notes are, you only have so much time to address those, and like kind of the assignments, like this is the draft of the script that everybody's kind of expecting to see. And then sometimes it's reassuring because you're like, yeah, we were feeling that too. And but at least, you know, they're judging the product on the whole beginning to end. And I think that's very important. Sometimes it's hard to do though, because people do run out of time and they're ready to like see what you have. And it's like, let us finish Act 3 or whatever. So we did that every single screening. And sometimes you can be like, okay, there's a giant action piece. We don't have time to get those boards, or get cleanup boards, because sometimes we might edit with rough boards. That's fine for the director and us to look at, but you're like, oh, it's really hard to tell what's flying across the sky. Is it a bird or a battleship? I don't know. I see a little scribble. You know, so you want your artist to go back and give you cleanup boards so it will present better to whoever the audience is that needs to watch it. And you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have time. So sometimes even those pieces can be a card going, and then there's the giant battle scene in the middle, and so-and-so rescues so-and-so. And you're like, we didn't want to do that either, even though it's fine, you know, because it's just a big action scene. Like, trust us, it'll be really cool when we get there. But yeah, I feel like we got lucky because Josh wanted to make sure we did that, and I think for storytelling, it's very important to do that and then really step back and look at your film. And then you're also showing it to kind of, you know, new eyes, people who haven't been watching us noodle it in the cutting room all this time. So when you get those audience members, even if they're execs, whoever, when they watch the whole thing, it's new to them. Even if we shared a couple sequences here and there with them, they're like, oh, this is what's happening. Yeah.
Okay. And Susan, you're nodding. What are your experiences with text screening?
Yeah, I you know, very similar to Lynn. We you know, especially with the execs, we always wanted to make sure we had that full version, because you can't. You're judging the emotional journey of your characters, of your protagonists, and how are you going to know what that journey is unless you put the whole film up. So you know, and then sometimes you do have to remind them, you know, on the, you know, 5th test screening or whatnot, like, remember, you love, you know, this is good, let's, you know, let's not touch that. And then also, you know, you have to remember with notes that you get, you may disagree, you may question, but they're not reacting to nothing. So take it there. Something is hitting that exec, that producer, you know, something is hitting them. So even if you're not, you fully don't think maybe that's not the right fix, they are reacting for something. So it's good to step back. It helps you step back as an editor, and you and your director and your head of story step back and go, okay, so they're reacting to something here. How can we make this work, but within the realm of what we need for that character's journey and what this film needs. So the test screenings are important, but they're always, I hate tech prep, I hate that. I hate
a lot of polishing. So
there's a lot of like, does it sound good in the theater?
Yeah, they get confused if there's no music.
Always pad, when you're getting ready for your screening, always give yourself a little bit of extra time and pad that, because some technical problem is always going to
happen. Well, what you brought up too with like just the notes. Sometimes you'll get notes and it's not even a clear note. It was just like they missed something and they're like, I'm a little confused in that area. What happened? So they don't really, it's a note, but then it's kind of a non-note. And you're like, okay, we have to examine why they missed that thing that we thought was in the movie, or why that area was confusing. And then that's part of the journey, is figuring out why they were feeling that way, or why they missed something that's an important story point. Because we are the keepers of the story, and we got to protect.
That's a good point. One thing Vicki will say, especially on a very first screening to the audience, to the execs, she'll say, please, try not to take notes during the screening. Just let it, experience it, because you might be taking a note and then you missed that, and then you're writing a note because you missed something. So I think that's very important. You just want that honest reaction. And if it was a big enough note, as an exec, you're going to remember it. You're going to write it down later. But that's
we might let them watch it a second time too if they really have to.
Yeah.
Well, we only have about a minute left, but one thing I did want to touch on before we wrapped is I know mentoring is very important to both of you, as it is to Ace. Do you want to just, maybe each of you share just one quick thing for the students in the audience who might want to get into this area?
Wow. Well, I think what Susan was saying earlier too, we are a small community, but then a large community, like just the world of editing in general. And I think if you're interested in being an editor, we all know that there's music videos, there's the news, there's television shows, sitcoms, 3-camera setup shows, features, industrial, documentary, and then the world of animation. So it's like, don't limit yourself. If you're interested in something, and everything you do is an experience, and every person you work with, you'll learn something new. We learn new things every single day, whether it's from our directors or producers, or just our previs camera department in our worlds, and each other, from our assistant editors. They'll like, oh, there's this new trick on Avid. You're like, what? So be open to all of that, be open to learning, and I think, yeah. And you know what we do, too? We worked at DreamWorks for a long time together, and DreamWorks was a great company because the longevity. And what they would do is when a film needs help, because let's say her film had a screening, and then they're going back figuring out what notes to address. So there's sort of a little lull in that. It's not as busy because now the writers and the director are trying to figure out what to do. They would totally, if the next film is prepping for one of these show and tell screenings, they'll be like, Susan, Lynn, they could use an extra pair of hands over there. So you may not be the lead, or you may not be the first assistant, or you may not be the associate. So whatever you are, you're contributing to that project. And you learn something from that project that does something different from your own project. So we all are like always working for each other. And I don't think I know anybody who has egos in this. It's like, cool, yeah, you need extra hands, I'll come help for a few months.
Exactly. You'll notice on my credit list when you watch Spellbound on November 22nd, multiple times on Netflix, that you'll notice so many editors listed, and these are all editors that Lynn and I have been friends with who are working at Skydance, and they had a little extra time, and we
we were getting ready for a big screening, and so they lent a hand, and I will lend a hand to their film as they need it. And that's the number one thing. If you take away anything from today, it's about, you know, just making contacts and with people in editorial and keeping up with those contacts, and always just be willing to learn and help and work hard.
Okay,
Thank you. And we are unfortunately out of time. I hope everyone learned as much as I did about animation editing, and please join me in thanking our guests.